Buffy, hun spilte på en festival i Karesuando i 1993. Der var det veldig mange av den frivillige staben, altså de som startet og gründet Riddu Riddu, som var til stede. De hadde et intenst ønske om at en dag, sa de, en dag så skal Buffy stå på scenen i Manndalen. Vi har flirt av det i mange år og sagt, ha, ja, tenk når det skjer. I 2009, det første året vi var knutepunktsfestival, da hadde vi økonomi til å hente Buffy Sainte-Marie hit. Når hun reiste herifra, så sa hun, hvis jeg kan få lov til å komme tilbake hit, så ville jeg gjerne det, men da ville jeg at vi også skal ha litt fokus på språk. For det er det nasjonale språkåret i Norge i 2013, og vi setter selvfølgelig fokus på alle de samiske språkene, og også urfolksspråk. Da var det en perfekt anledning til å invitere Buffy tilbake. Nettopp fordi at hun selv hadde et sånt ønske om at neste gang skulle det også handle om språk. Så derfor er hun tilbake i år.
We came into Alta and then drove, so it was so beautiful. So we're very happy to be here.
What about the indigenous spirit?
The indigenous spirit?
At this festival?
Well, last time it was wonderful. And you're the first people I meet, so yay! It's good. So far, so good.
I mean, when you had your first big successes in the 60s, and we all are fans, I'm fan from that time. At the same time, the Canadian government had this adoption program, adopting Indian children as far away as possible from the reservations, actually. I mean, it's such an enormous contrast. And 50 years have passed, and how much has changed? I mean, much has changed, but has enough changed?
Well, the adoption program that you're talking about was going on in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. And the residential schools that children were put into continued until about, I'm not exactly sure, maybe 15, 20 years ago, yeah. And they tried to put Michel in, and his grandmother hid him in the bush.
I grew up traditional. I went to school in the city. Now I'm going back to my culture. So,
yeah. And that's how it is for many of us. Like I was adopted away, and I was raised in the States speaking English. And when we travel to Australia, or we travel to New Zealand, or we come here, I've realized over the years that as Indigenous people, the colonial system has pretty much treated us pretty much the same. And consequently, not only because of the way we've been treated by colonial people, but because of our Indigenous heritage and the fact that we sit on the ground. Our own indigenousness gives us a lot in common, including the preservation of our languages, which many of us are trying to revitalize. So things, it took a lot of people to close the boarding schools and to stop those programs. And we always have to give people credit for that. Not only our own people, but everybody who saw that that was wrong. And that's the kind of thing that gives me a lot of hope. Because we couldn't have done that by ourselves. Other people had to see how wrong it was too. Right now, the attack on nature is just horrendous. It's just horrible in Canada right now. Between Canada and the U.S. and oil, oil and uranium, it's really awful. And these are things that we can't be afraid to think positively. We can't be afraid to hope. We can't be afraid to stay healthy, to get enough sleep to deal with it. Because just like they said that there would never be an end to slavery, just like they said women would never vote, just like they said there has always been war and there hasn't, things can change if we choose to change them. So
I know it's going very strong because the drum has started from the northern people of Canada. And how are you going to involve Riddu with I Don't Know More?
I don't know. I'm part of I Don't Know More too. We all are. I Don't Know More is, if you don't know, it was started by 4 women in Saskatchewan, which is in Western Canada, the center of Western Canada. And it's not an organization where there's a president and a secretary, and it's not like that. It's everyone. It's like the Occupy movement. It's like the anti-war movement of the 60s. It's people who know that things must change, and maybe it needs to change in a different way in your community and a different way in your community, but we're changing it. We're not going to become despondent, and we're not going to let people simply get away with it. We're going to, I have a song called No No Keshagesh that we'll be doing. Keshagesh means greedy guts. And it says, and it's a name that we had for a puppy, but it's about environmental greed. And it says, no, no, Keshagesh, you can't do that. Can't do that no more. So now, Idle No More has, especially through social media, become very big in the world. They know about Idle No More in Egypt, in Italy, in New Zealand, and of course all over North America. I'm so happy that you mentioned it. Thank you. And how did you hear about it?
Social media.
See? See? We have new tools.
Yeah, I actually arranged Greenland in solidarity with Idle No More.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I've done, last week I did a webinar, which is like talking to your computer. And then a couple of months ago I had done another little video in solidarity. But anybody can be a part of it. And it's a very good thing that's going on. It's nice because with social media, all of a sudden you'll find out that people are going to be at a shopping mall, and all of a sudden there'll be thousands of people at a shopping mall dancing. And Idle No More has really pointed out the fact that the treaties are very easy to understand. Some of them are only 4 pages long. And Idle No More points out that nature is under attack. And we gotta help any way you can. So, thank you.
If you can tell some more about the language struggle you are having, and also your language program, what you are having now at home, and also why is it so important to develop the indigenous languages?
Well, I don't have a language program. I have a teaching project, Cradleboard Teaching Project. And what we're going to be doing tomorrow, we're having a seminar on indigenous languages. And all of us speak a little bit of our language, but not as much as we want. So we travel all over the world, just everywhere. And wherever we find indigenous people, we all have the same problem, you know, becoming colonialized, and the genocide that's gone on has done away with a lot of our culture, including our languages. So many people all over the world are interested in revitalizing indigenous languages ourselves, and working with each other to help each other to do that. So tomorrow we'll all learn more about it. All of us will be there to listen and to learn. For me, I've been involved with trying to, I don't say preserve, I say revitalize. Preserve means it's dead and it's in the museum, but revitalize means it's alive. And for me, I'm always surprised when, for instance, people who speak a European language, French is a little bit like Italian, is a little bit like German, is a little bit like, you know, other languages, yeah? But indigenous languages don't function like these fingers. They function differently. They function like a thumb. And it's been shown that they access a different part of the brain. And of course they do. They were developed not with all of the other, not with European languages or with Asian languages. They were developed independently. Indigenous languages were developed independently. And they have something very special, just like a plant has a certain kind of vitamin that another plant doesn't have. You know, we don't even know how exciting it would be if everybody could understand everybody. You know, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to explore in our own communities, being able to know both the language that we happen to know, which is probably a colonial language, and access our elders who already know our indigenous languages, and further explore what there is to find there, because it's very special. You can say things in an indigenous language that you can't say in, you know, one of the huge planetary languages. You think differently, you access different parts of the brain, so it is yet to be discovered all the wonderful things that there are. But anyone who has ever studied, for instance, Aboriginal people in Australia, you know, if neuropsychiatrists who have studied their brains find out that they have very special talents. And so does each of us, and so do our cultures. So I think it's a matter of helping each other to discover the additional talents that the human brain is capable of. And there are still some language speakers around, so all of us are trying to learn. None of us here are experts. Maybe some of the people tomorrow will be.
If I can just mention one more thing, is that about the indigenous languages. A lot of the languages, they would disappear. This week I had a story about Bua language in Andaman Islands. There was only one person left who spoke Bua language. She died, then the language disappeared. How would you, if you could tell about the status for indigenous languages? Why is it so important now that the states, they take their responsibility and to develop and revitalize the languages?
Oh, the states won't do that. I'm an educator. You think I'm a singer, but my first college degree was in education. No, the states will not do that. I don't think that the European states will either. It's up to us.
What about the Canadian US?
No. They won't, but I'll tell you as much as they will do. Right now, what I'm doing with the Cradleboard Teaching Project is I'm going to different universities and teaching the universities how to do what we do with Cradleboard in order that children of all ethnicities can learn exciting, enriching, accurate, so they have engaging materials by and about, developed by Indigenous people ourselves, because there are a lot of us who are teachers. It's not as though we can't do it, but we're teaching the universities how to do this. And it needs to be very local. For instance, if a university in Saskatchewan, we teach them how to write a curriculum for children of all ethnicities, not about beads and feathers and flags and, you know, earrings, no. It's about science. Science through Native American eyes. Science through Sami eyes. Yeah. Because in order to survive, we have had to access the same scientific principles as everybody else has to use. You have to observe, you have to teach each other, you have to experiment, and you have to find out the difference between, well, if you see the stars are in that position, you know that the berries are going to be ripe in that place because generations of people have known that. Or you know that the buffalo are going to be returning when the sun and the stars and the moon are aligned in that way. That's the same kind of science as people all over the world use. But what is not science is if you're looking up at the sky and you see the clouds have the shape of a buffalo, that doesn't mean the buffalo's coming, see? So you have to have some scientific methods to understand the difference between dreaming and experimenting. You have to pass on that knowledge. So everybody who has survived has science. So we teach people about the science that was used in their local communities. We teach them about acoustics that the Mayans developed, who also developed optics and calendars and astronomy and agriculture. So there's just a lot that colonial people have not known. It's not as though they have wanted to kill it. They just haven't even known that it was any good. Because we were so dead, you know, we were so decimated in the genocide that we weren't even in a position to tell them the wonderful things that we have to share. So now things have changed, and now we're going ahead in every way, through music, through Idle No More, through talking to you. Yeah, we're letting people know that the world is has something, the native world, the indigenous world, have things of great, great value, and probably the biggest one that I can think of, the most comprehensive one, is our relationship to the earth. You know.
Buffy Sainte-Marie, thank you very much.